growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on
This is
Sunday.
about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Guns up! Giddy up, everybody. Welcome to the Failure to Stop podcast, the #1 show where law enforcement meets culture. And you are listening to Night Shift, baby. Or as Tansey says, baby.
Baby. I got that from Ross Patterson. It's from listening to way too much Ross Patterson.
RPR, baby.
Yeah.
Who's the Nooners around here? Anybody?
Dude, I'm a Nooner. I got my Nooner tee. My Nooner
there
t-shirt.
You go. Well, then it's official.
Nooner.
It's official. That's what you got to do is get a t-shirt. Then it's official.
Dude, I'm almost like coming on. I'm almost like coming from this like hangover from last week for like 100 episodes, 1 million downloads, 3-year distillery anniversary. This is the week that I'm going to come in just chilling.
Yeah.
Except we have a huge guest tonight, which doesn't.
Yeah, we got a lot going on, man. There's no rest for the wicked, I guess. You know, we're here, we're in it, and there's no end in sight. Thanks to you guys, the Wolf Pack. If you just listened to the show for the first time, you've stumbled into this. This is the Failure to Stop podcast. We have 5 shows a week. They're all different formats. This one is Night Shift. We pick topics that we think. It's kind of like an anything goes, but the whole concept is that something that's going to interest you enough to kill that last little bit of your night shift before you got to go home. And then also sort of like this angle of where cops would like circle up the cars and talk about something. They'll talk about what makes them laugh, or they'll argue about something. They'll get into some conspiracy theories. So it's all over the place. Or sometimes they'll talk about, you know, how they would run the mob if they were a part of a mob family or the mafia, you know?
Is it better to be feared or loved? I think it's better for them to be afraid to love me.
The questions that really matter. And to discuss it today, we have a really cool, interesting guest that I think you guys are going to enjoy, Michael Franzese. And if I mispronounce his name, he will correct me. And if
let's go over under on this, since I suck at names and you generally don't. I think it's Franzese.
I think it's Franzese.
Oh shit,
that's what I think it is. But I think in the old country it'd have been Franzese. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I
He can tell us this. But if you don't know who he is, he's a former capo for the Colombo crime family back in the 1980s. So while I was watching Thundercats, my man Mike was making his way up in the mob. He was known for being one of the top money earners in the mob since Al Capone. In fact, in his book, he says that in 1986, there was a cover story of Fortune named him as number 18 on Fortune magazine's list of the 50 most wealthy and powerful mafia bosses. He had a helicopter, multiple homes, and a private plane to travel between them. Now, fortunately, he was able to walk away from that life and reinvent himself, and now for the last 25 years has spoken in the corporate world, churches, prison ministries, pro sports teams. He runs a large YouTube channel under his name and has also released a new book that I am enjoying so far called Mafia Democracy, How a Republic Became a Mob Racket. So let's welcome to the show Michael, and he can guarantee how he can settle the debate about his last name.
How are you, gentlemen? And let me settle that debate right away. It's the kind of American way to say it is Franzese, 2 syllables.
All right.
Yeah, so you got it right. And the Italian way would be Franzese, kind of 3 syllables. But either way is right. I answer to both.
Nice. So we were kind of both right. I like it when that happens. It's always nice when you.
It's cool to have like a name like that.
You like that?
I think it's cool to have a name that where you can like if you're in a, like, let's say maybe you're getting arrested or something and you're a cop, and you can be like, Mr. Franzese, you're like, it's Franzese. Or if they're like, hey, Mr. Franzese, you're like, it's Franzese. Like you can, like, no matter what, you can make somebody feel like an asshole if you want to.
Well, I can tell you this. I've been arrested in the past about 18 times, and they always get the name right. They know exactly who they're arresting. So,
when you got arrested those 18 times, were they all mostly by the same department, like in New York, or was it or is it all over the place?
No, mostly in New York, but I've also had arrests in Florida and California. So those three states, the feds were in New York.
Right.
And then I had the state of New York, the feds out of New York, Florida was the state, and California was the state.
Gotcha.
Which state was the best at it?
Well, I got convicted in New York. Huh. I actually took a plea in New York on one case. I beat them 5 times. I took a plea on one. In Florida, I took a plea also. So I probably would have beat that case, but it ran concurrent with my federal case, so it was easy just to dispose of it. And then California, it was kind of a slap on the wrist after we got through all the nonsense that you have to go through.
And was it Rudy Giuliani on the other side of the table coming after you at one point, right? Because he wrote the foreword for your book.
Yes. Rudy did indict me. I was the first major mob guy he indicted under the RICO statute. I was a lead defendant. I had 15 co-defendants. And fortunately, I was acquitted in that case, because if I lost that case, I wouldn't be talking to you gentlemen today. That's for sure. Because he would have given me at least 50 years, maybe 100. I mean, that's the kind of time they were giving out. Wow. So I was very fortunate to beat that case. And then, yes, 30 some odd years later, he writes the foreword for my book. We kind of reacquainted ourselves under better circumstances on a radio show, a dear friend of mine. And when we asked him to write the foreword, he wrote it, and it blew me away. I was surprised in how nice it was and how on point he was in writing the foreword. It was great.
That's awesome, man. Well, tell us, especially, you're probably going to be one of the first exposures of your content is going to be, to our audience anyway, will be this interview. So tell us about you, growing up. What I'm most curious about is, as you grew up, what was your home life like? And then what was your first exposure or early exposure to mob life and influence, and sort of walk us through that experience of ending up in the mob in the first place?
Well, I'll get through it briefly. My dad was Sonny Franzese. He was the underboss of the Colombo family back in the 1960s. And he was a very high profile figure. He was a major target of law enforcement, always in the media. He was kind of like the John Gotti of his day. Mm-hmm. And so at a very early age, I knew something was going on with my dad. The tactics from law enforcement were a lot different against organized crime back then than they are today. Today, everything is very covert. They got a lot of undercover informants, high-tech surveillance equipment. But back in my day, when they were under investigation, guys, law enforcement wanted them to know about it. So for a period of about 10 years, when I grew up in Brooklyn, later on Long Island, New York, my dad was under investigation from 7 or 8 different agencies, and they'd all have a car parked around my house 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So from a very early age, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, we knew something was up. I couldn't, put my finger on it then. But then as I grew older and we saw what was going on, I was exposed to it early on. We had a big war in the Colombo family in the late 50s, early 60s. My dad was involved in that. So, I got a glimpse of things that were going on.
And when you say war, was that a war within the family, or was it Colombo versus another crime family?
No, it was within the family. Families don't go to war against each other. That doesn't happen. That happened in the 40s, 30s, 40s. Once Luciano put the commission together and everybody had their place, you don't war against each other. Whenever there's a war, it's a civil war, and it's always over leadership. And so, my dad was away for a while, and, there was a lot of stuff that went on. So I knew it early on. Then, of course, my dad got indicted 4 times in the 60s. And very high-profile indictments, a lot of media attention. He went to trial 4 times. He was acquitted on 3 state cases, but then convicted in a federal case and sentenced to 50 years in prison. And in 1970, he went off to do his time. At the age of 50, he got 50. I was a pre-med student at that time, Hofstra University. My dad didn't want this life. He wanted me to go to school, be a doctor. He tried to keep me out of it. But after he went in 70, Joe Colombo kind of took me under his wing. I knew the family obviously very well. Joe Colombo had the Italian-American Civil Rights League at that point. I was very active in it. I was 20 years old, trying to use it as a way to help my dad get out of prison. And, in a visit that I had with my dad in Leavenworth Penitentiary, I told him, I'm not going to school anymore. If I don't help you, you're going to die in here. Because he was 50 when he went in, add 50 on top of that, it's a death sentence. And it was during that meeting that he said, if you're going to be on the street, son, I want you on the street the right way. And he proposed me for membership into that life. And that's when it started for me at the age of, I was 21, 22 years old. And that's when, I started to become a recruit in that life. I had to prove myself to be worthy of becoming a made member, taking that oath. And that happened for me on Halloween night, 1975. I took an oath and became a sworn made member of the family.
So what does it mean to be a made man?
Well, you have rank, in that life, you have a boss, an underboss, consigliere, capo regime, and a soldier. Soldier is the rank that you get when you first take the oath and become made. And then you either stay a soldier or you move up in the rank, depending upon who you are and what goes on. And then we have associates, but they're not really part of the family. They work with us, but they're not made guys. They're not privy to our policies and, and to the information that we consider secret.
It sounds a lot like a motorcycle gang. I guess maybe that's where they get it. That's because that's what they have. They have like the soldier. They have the sergeant at arms or whatever.
I knew a bunch of the Hells Angels, and they have a ritual, and they're kind of they have an organization. Obviously, they're organized in that regard. I don't think they're structured as well as we are, but it works for them.
What makes like mob bosses so structured? Like, was it just because of like an elite class? Like maybe like the people that were ruling mob bosses are just smarter because they have like more money?
Well, no, it started in Italy. The mafia started in Italy, and it was a structured organization from there. And then when, they came over to America and called it Cosa Nostra, this thing of ours, a similar organization, obviously to the mafia, but the guys that started it here were mafia guys from Italy. So the same structure was put into place. And then it's all based upon, obviously, the oath that we take, which is the oath of omerta, which means it's silence. And you're never supposed to even admit the existence of that life.
Okay.
And obviously, you don't betray your brothers and you don't turn an informant, and you do what you're told when you're told to do it. You're loyal to the oath. You're loyal to the organization. And, it's built on allegedly honor and respect. And, I will say this, mafia in America survived and prospered under some very tough situations. And it was because it was organized, and it prospered better than any other organization here in this country until the government really cracked down in the mid 80s.
I guess how common was it or not common was it for a non-Italian to become a made member of a crime family?
Well, you can't become a made member if you're not Italian. Your father must be Italian. Your mom can be of another descent, but your father must be Italian, and they verify and prove that, obviously. And there's a lot of nepotism in that life because, you want to bring family people in that you feel you can trust, that are not going to become informants. So there's, like Hollywood, there's a lot of nepotism, a lot of fathers bring their sons, their cousins, their nephews. That's how it happens. So you see that a lot in that life.
That's awesome. I guess my dreams are shattered of ever trying to become a made man since I'm not Italian. I don't even know what my dad is. Maybe
sometimes
German mix.
It's good to have shattered dreams. You need to be in that life.
Well, some people would compare, both Eric and I were police officers, and some people say that police officers are the largest criminal organization or crime family because of we have rank and structure too. I think Eric and I share the same opinion. Once you reach a certain rank in policing, though, you just become a politician, which is a problem anyway.
Yeah, I've seen that. The chief of police out here in Beverly Hills was a friend, and his second in command was a dear friend. And when the chief retired, my friend, his name is Tony Lee, I can mention it. He's now the chief of police over at UCLA. But I said, Tony, why don't you take the top spot? You're the guy. And he said, Michael, it's too political. He said, and I don't want to be a politician. I want to be a police officer. So he took the job over at UCLA. He's a great guy. We're really dear friends. And but he told me it's such a political spot. You got to go to dinners and you got to romance people and all that stuff. He wasn't into it.
Which is weird because that doesn't seem like a necessary facet of, law enforcement and leadership in that capacity. But that seems to be the way it is. To pause on the mob stuff, but I mean, because of it, nonetheless, what was your best experience with cops? Like, in terms of your interaction with them, what was an experience that stands out as you encountered a cop, whether they were surveilling your house or whatever, or whether they were arresting you, whatever interaction it was that sticks out as like, man, that's actually a pretty good experience?
Well, I want to tell you this. I want to preface that by saying I grew up hating police. I hated law enforcement. I hated the government. And not because my dad taught me that way. He taught me to respect the law. But it was really because of what I witnessed. Like I said, they were very different back then. I had run-ins with them because I loved my father and I saw them as harassing my family. We had, incidents with one another when I was younger. So I grew up under that mentality. Now, I want to say now I don't feel that way anymore. I finally realized that you guys were the good guys. We were the bad guys, at least most of the time. Look, anybody can go crazy in life. But, some of the good experiences I had when I got older and I understood what things were really all about, I was very appreciative. My brother had a real drug problem. And some of the officers, he would get himself in trouble quite a bit and, criminal activity involved. And some of the officers would come to me and say, Mike, we don't want to arrest your brother. We know he's got a problem. Try to get him to clean up his act. And they did that to me more than once. And I really respected them for that. And to me, those were good things. At the time I had we had a couple of gambling operations, card rooms, and they would call me up, Mike, we got to do a bust. We don't want it to be yours, clean it up, get these guys out of here. So stuff like that I thought were good experiences. And you got to understand, we had 750 made guys that comprised all 5 families in New York. That's a lot of guys in New York. Some of the guys had relatives that were police officers, had neighbors that were police officers. So we got along with them. It wasn't that, oh, you're the enemy and, we don't talk to you guys. And they treated us right, most of the time. When I got arrested, it was like I had to get arrested, it was that kind of a thing. But I didn't have really trouble with local police. Now, the FBI was a little bit different. Those guys we had some run-ins with, and a lot of guys I didn't have a lot of respect for the way they came at us, so to speak.
Well, I think with the FBI, knowing a lot of FBI agents, it's not as personal as being a cop. So you're just a case and a case number to them. Whereas a cop, you're a cop in a community. And so it's a much more personal experience being as a police officer. And when I work with feds, we would do, because they always bring in, usually like a local uniform officer with them to do hits.
Right.
I don't know if it's to show face or it's a jurisdictional thing, but it's almost required. I'm pretty sure it's required. At least it was a policy with the department I work with. So I went on a couple of these raids, if you'd call it, with some marshals or with some federal agents. And, once you get in there, they are very like, get on the ground, do this, do that, which is fine. I'm fine with that. It's safety. But then once they get them in handcuffs, they're like, yeah, we got you. You got you. Which cops don't talk like that. Like a real cop will get you in arrest and you're like, hey man, you good? You need anything? All right, we're going to go process you now. It's more of a personal thing because that motherfucker's coming back and he's probably not going to jail forever. And so, we don't really get the opportunity or the option to treat them like a piece of shit. The feds come in, kind of talk their shit, talk their game, and then they get the fuck out and they don't have to see that guy again. So I think it's, I've always said defund the FBI. I think it's trash.
Well, especially lately with some of the things that we're hearing, they're so political.
It is the mob. These dudes are all working for these fucking assholes.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I mean, I'm about I would say 35% of the way through the book, and I haven't heard you directly talk about the FBI in that sense, but that's essentially the book that you wrote. I want to make sure that what's the title of it specifically?
Mafia Democracy.
Mafia
There it is.
Democracy.
Yeah, how our republic became a mob racket, and you go right after it in this book. You open it with this story of John Murtha, and we have a lot of veterans that listen to the show, and people are going to know, people will probably know that name because he's a Purple Heart recipient. He's essentially a war hero, basically. And then you go right after the story of him eventually elevating to a position of power where he's lining his pockets. And you go right into Pelosi becoming a multimillionaire while she has a career as a politician. And it's the same thing now we're seeing with, even unfortunately, law enforcement arms of the government getting involved in politics and some really crazy behavior. And you go after that. What was the motivation for you to go after this in the book?
Mike, in Obama's last term, I had written a book, a business book. I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. And the book was successful, and my publisher at the time, HarperCollins, came to me and said, Mike, we want you to write another book. I had to deal with them on one more book, and they said, let's write a political book. And so I thought about it, and, honestly, up until about 12, 13 years ago, I wasn't really into politics. When I was on the street, we had some politicians that we did business with. We had them, I don't want to say on the payroll, but we took care of them. Mm-hmm. But I started to get really interested in it. I got kids, and I said, what's going on with these people, man? And so when I started to write the book, I said, they're acting so mob-like, these guys. I see the similarities. They're so Machiavellian in their ideology and the way they work. So I started to write the book then. I wrote about 5 chapters. And I looked at my wife one day and I said, Cam, why do I need this? And this is a bipartisan book. This cuts right down the middle. It's the system. It's the ideology. I said, what do I need this? I got friends in law enforcement now. Nobody's bothering me. We got a nice life. I went back to my publisher. I gave him back the advance. I said, I'm not writing a book, right? Because it was true. Cut to now, this time around, I said, I'm so disgusted. They're getting worse and worse and worse. And I feel an obligation to write this book. And so I wrote it. And I just want people to understand how Machiavellian, how mob-like this government is now acting. Because Mike and Eric, people tell me all the time in messages on, Mike, the mob should be running the government. You would do a better job. And I tell them, no, you don't want the mob running the government. But in reality, in a way it is. It's very mob-like. So I want to make people aware. I want to make this clear. I don't want to revolt. I don't want them burning down buildings and doing anything like that. But I want them to hold these people accountable in the voting booths. If they, Mike, this, and Eric, you got a partner. He lies to you once. All right, you straighten it out. Second time, hey, what's going on here? Third, fourth, fifth time, hey, enough. That's it. It's over. These politicians lie to us daily. Campaign promises reverse themselves, do the absolute opposite. And what do we say? Oh, it's only politics. It's not politics. It's hurting us in a big way. So I go into very good, as you know, very detailed in here. I point fingers at people. I name names. I back it up. It's all true. And this should be very upsetting to people. The comments that we're getting, the book was a bestseller the day of its release on Amazon in 4 categories and also on Barnes & Noble, which tells you that the atmosphere that people are in. They wanted to read this book. And the comments, I'm so pleased with them because people are getting it. They're making intelligent comments. Michael, we see it. We understand it. We realize it. But you've pointed it out so specifically now. Now we really get it. And they're angry about it. And they should be. We have to change the system. We have to.
I like how you say it and everything. And listen, you don't know us from Adam, but our big thing on this show is all politicians are cunts. We feel like you don't become a politician because you're a good human being. Normally you've burned everybody else around you down so that you can be at the top. So we don't like any politicians, and that goes within the police departments, fire departments, whatever. With our show, we break down some really big cases on Fridays. And some of the cases, it's an open book. We did one where an officer and his wife, a school teacher, sexually assaulted over 151 children. It's the most foul case we've ever written. This just happened this last year. Major case. We were able to get the polygraph from this guy. We were able to, because he was a captain. He'd been a police officer for over 20 years. And a serial rapist, but we were able to get his polygraph. We were able to get all the affidavits with minor redactions. Only redactions were addresses and names of minors. The amount of information we were able to get in the span of 8 days was incredible. without any hiccup. But when we try to break down the Epstein case, you can't find one thing. And Epstein wasn't a politician. He was just an elitist. So, we kind of see is this like, as you say, the mob works things. How do we as a people come to just be okay with that? Like, I'm still not okay with this whole Epstein debacle. Like, I really feel an injustice is done. Why is it that a cop and a teacher, we can get all of their information for 151 sexual assaults on minors, but we can't get one single bit of information, from a ruling elite rich guy?
Because politicians were in bed with him. It's very simple, and they don't want it known. I mean, they do this all. Look, and I'm not playing to you guys at this point in time. Understand this. One of the most ridiculous, absurd, stupid things is for politicians to support defunding the police. Now, I'm an ex-mob guy, but even I know that we need police because why? I was a criminal. I was in jail for 8 years with criminals. I knew criminals all over the place. And I'm saying, do these politicians think when they go to, and say, we're going to be soft on crime, we're going to defund the police, that criminals are going to say, okay, thank you for being so kind to us. And then they're going to go straight? Of course not. They're going to increase their criminal activity. They're going to become more of a danger to the community and the society. And how these people, these politicians pander to minority groups that are saying defund the police, and then we see the havoc that it caused, and they still don't reverse their position. All right, Biden is now because he's getting killed at the polls, and now all of a sudden he wants to, fund the police department. But these things are insane. There's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing other than they're pandering to people to hopefully stay in power by getting their votes. That's the only explanation for any of this. But
It's the promise. Well, before, like you said, the defund the police coming out of at least one side of the political spectrum, and then even most recently the State of the Union saying we need to come together. We don't want to defund the police. We need to fund them now more than ever. It's like you talked about our government becoming more and more Machiavellian, which is part of the inspiration for mafia activity, right? And you share a quote from Machiavelli in your book. It's called it says this: the promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. A wise prince cannot and should not keep his pledge when it's against his interest to do so and when his reason for making the pledge are no longer operative. And I thought that's the operative word is like what works for that politician right then in that moment. That's what they need to say,
Exactly. And how is our government, fitting that ideology today? Another thing Machiavelli says, listen to this. When he's advising his prince how to maintain control of his kingdom, he tells the prince, you can do anything you need to do to maintain control. You can lie, you can steal, you can cheat, you can kill. Anything you do, because the important thing is to maintain control. However, to the outside world, you must always appear to be upright, honest, and having integrity. That's our government.
Do you think the government has hitmen?
Well, listen, they came to us to try to assassinate, what's his name? Castro in Cuba.
Yeah.
They came to us to try to do that. That's a fact. I mean, I'm not making that up.
I was like part of Operation Northwood or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, so listen, I have my thoughts about Hillary Clinton and the Clintons. I've heard so many things in the past from people that I consider to be in the know. Like I wouldn't put anything past them. I'm being honest with you. And I don't want to condemn somebody for something as serious as that unless I believed it to be true. I'm not into conspiracy theories, but I am into things that have been relayed to me that I believe to be on point.
Well, I think there's things that are like probable. There's things that are plausible. And I think we've gone from, 2 or 3 years ago, you hear all these things and you're like, it's plausible. Don't think it's quite probable. But then as things start to add up and like as a police officer, I'm almost now to the point where if you look at just the evidence alone, I'm like, it's more probable now. Like it's become a probability that some very nefarious activities have happened. When you guys were in the mob, how does that kind of go down? How does that play out when they come to you to try to put a hit on somebody? Is there, is it, well, I imagine it's not the politician that's coming to you and being like, hey, Michael, you guys take this guy out for me. It's got to be like a low level employee, right?
Well, it all depends. I mean, there are different circumstances under where somebody can be, in trouble to suffer those consequences. But I want you to understand this. There's a lot of guys on YouTube now that talk about murder all the time and the people they killed and all that kind of stuff. The reality of it is murder in that life was taken very seriously. We didn't go around randomly killing people. And it was only the boss. It was only the boss that can condemn somebody and say, okay, we're putting a hit out on this guy. And that's after serious discussion. I mean, you sit down, you discuss it. Did this guy really violate the rules? What's the evidence against him? It goes back and forth. And then the boss makes a decision. You can't just go start killing people. It's not that way. But some of these guys that are on the internet, they really weren't made guys. They talk about, we killed this guy, I baseball batted that guy, did all of that. And who knows, maybe they did, but they weren't really part of our life because murder was taken very seriously. It was a serious consequence with other made guys. Trust me.
Well, do you think that there's somebody? Sorry, do you think there's anybody out? Do you think there's anybody out right now? Like, for instance, Elon Musk, how he kind of has been tweeting out, if I end up dying from mysterious causes, I loved all of you. And then now they're coming at him, trying to get him with sexual assault. And he tweeted back this week after the sexual assault on his airplane. He says, look, this is ridiculous. They're just trying to come after me for this whole Twitter thing. Anybody that knows me, and that's a lot of people that have flown with me, know that I don't even have flight attendants. I do all my own shit on my own airplane. Like, I mean, do you see somebody like that? Do you fear for somebody like that? And with your experience go, that dude better shut his mouth or...
Absolutely. I mean, these people are so vindictive. I mean, he was their, golden boy for a while. Now that he said he's voting Republican and he's buying Twitter so that we can have free speech, everybody's turning on him at the top. Because why? If we have free speech, they can't control the narrative. And that's what they want to do. These are I got to tell you something. There's nothing worse than a bully in life. A bully. A bully doesn't really have power from himself. He has powers from outside sources that give him the power or her the power. And these are bullies. They have the power of the government behind them, and they go after people using that power. They're bullies. I hate to say it, and I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, but there are so many of them, and I named them in the book, and there's so many of them that are just abusing their power in such a way because they never want to give it up. So, yeah, I think Musk, he's going to be under investigation. They're going to try to hurt him. Now, he may be powerful enough in his own way and have enough around him to ward off something like that. But he's going to go through it. And he said it. He said, I know it. I know what these people are capable of, and I know what I'm going to go through, but I don't care.
We saw it with Brett Kavanaugh. We saw it with Joe Rogan. I mean, I kind of feel like maybe Joe Rogan's not silenced, but he's been a lot more, his guests have been a lot more careful.
Yeah.
Since the whole Dr. Malone, the Malone type deal. Did you ever feel like a bully when you were in the mob? Did you ever, like when you were in jail, did you ever sit back and go, holy shit, was I one of those guys?
You know what, Eric? Honestly, no. I didn't conduct myself that way, and I'm not patting myself on the back. And that's because my father taught me, to be different. He said, don't wear that power on your sleeve. Don't abuse it. And my dad always told me, Michael, remember something. Always be kind to the little guys. And he didn't mean that to be offensive, the little guys, just his way of talking about it. He said, the valet parker, be kind to him. The waitress, these are the people that make you strong. It's not the people on top. They're looking to get you. It's the people underneath you, the way you treat them that's going to make you strong. And that's just the mentality that I had. So, for me, I was more diplomatic in the way I did things, and I tried to not burn bridges and always get around somebody the right way. And look, if I had to do something that was distasteful, it was a last resort for me. That's how I conducted myself. And I'm not the only one. A lot of guys were like that. Mm-hmm. The first resort wasn't, we're going to go baseball bat this guy. We're going to go, what good is that?
I think there's a lot of similarities there with police officers. I think the majority of police officers want to get through their day-to-day without having to hit somebody, without having to get their knuckles dirty. They want to try to take the diplomatic approach, the long-term approach. And there are some cops that are out there to knock skulls. Yeah. Maybe you can argue that that's needed and it's not, but I think the majority of police officers want to be diplomatic in the way that you're saying, so that you can sleep at night and knowing that you didn't abuse your power, you didn't you didn't abuse the badge on your shoulder or the maidness of your mafia lifestyle.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And I agree with that. I mean, I saw a lot of stuff in prison. There were some prison guards that were just nice. They did their job, don't get me wrong, but they did it the right way. And there was others that wanted to throw their chest out and show their authority. We get it. There's all types of people. But, with all these arrests that were happening lately and the cry of racism every 5 minutes, people ask me about it. And I said, look, I've been arrested 18, 19 times. You know what happens when I get arrested? What? I put my hands out, put the handcuffs on me, and I get in the car. I don't fight. I don't scream. I don't yell. I don't run. I said, when you do that, there's no reason to come after you. They're not going to start hitting you. I said, and people don't understand that. I said, you put your hands out, you get the handcuffs, or maybe in the back, whatever they want to do it. You get in the car and you go down to the precinct. That's how it goes. If you want to avoid this stuff that we're seeing, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And, people, they don't get it. They don't get it. The cops are abusing these guys and, But listen, you know what's out there. And they look at these things, they make I got to say this too, because since anything seems to go on this show,
that's true,
which is good. We read yesterday that former President Obama makes a statement about, this horrible, horrific Texas mass shooting of all these young kids.
Yeah.
And he makes a comment. This brings us back to the day that George Floyd was, unmercifully killed. What in the heck does that have to do with these 19 kids that were killed? Their families are mourning, horrific tragedy. What is he trying to say?
I saw that and I thought, oh, maybe, okay. Maybe he just did a little nod to the anniversary of George Floyd and then, just to kind of do his due diligence for whatever he needs to do for his position and future plans or whatever. But he doubled down and tripled down. He continued on. It was like a sequence of tweets where he left those kids in Uvalde, Texas behind. Like that was just a quick mention. And then it was all about the actions of this other organization and all about what had gone on with the George Floyd thing, which is, we've covered the Derek Chauvin stuff, and I actually think that the culture missed a huge opportunity to get united in that situation because everybody pretty much was like, yeah, this shouldn't have happened.
They got to keep the divisiveness alive, baby. You know what I mean? Don't let a good tragedy go to waste. We need to, we don't need to come together right now over these children. Like they were like, hold on, all these motherfuckers agree on something. Killing children is bad. We can't have everybody agreeing on something. Let's throw a wrench in it real quick.
Unless they're in the womb, then it's okay.
It was so inappropriate, man. What a
inappropriate
statement that was. I couldn't believe it. But look, I was very disappointed in Obama. Well, I met him on the beach in Hawaii. I
was going to ask you about that. I was like, hey, how's the relationship progressed since you hung out on the beach with him in Maui?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I was excited that he was going to become president because I said, hey, this guy can unify this country. He can unify it. He did just the opposite. He was so divisive, and he continues to be. And it was very disappointing. He had a golden opportunity to unify this country, and he totally went the other way on it.
That's so funny because that was exactly because I was fresh in the Army at the time that his first running was, and I saw this like be the change and all, like a lot of the military guys, and I've always been more like you, like I'm just different. I was a different style of cop. I was different in the military. I'm just a different fucking human being. But I thought, wait a minute, guys, like if everybody doesn't like this guy and everybody's talking shit about him, it might be the guy we actually want. Because I'm down with change. I like this. He's a young black dude. Like fucking what a middle finger to the rest of the establishment. I'm for it. So I did vote for him for the first part. And then like you said, by that second term, I just saw him like bending the knee at every opportunity, not pushing back on anything, and really just was a completely different person than he was when he was running. And then, going back on it on the second term and realizing his cadence and his speech had changed and it was all just fake and it was all bullshit. I did not vote for him the second time.
Totally.
Well, hello there. Yes, I am filming this and recording this on my ghost bed. There are many like it, but this one, oh, she's mine. And I do sleep so good it's scary. Wish you could see the rest of this king-size bad boy? Well, you would if the underpaid producer wasn't too lazy to actually film this for me. Instead, you get this. in all of its glory. Not only do I sleep amazing on this ghost bed purchased with code DRINKINBROS, DRINKINBROS, saving an extra 30% off of already good prices, but listen to what it does to my voice. It makes it smooth, silky, provocative. If you would like to sleep on a giant ghost bed like this, well, you should get one.
That's exactly what we're talking about, with all of these politicians. They
They're
say
like good car salesmen. You know what I mean? They're like really great car salesmen.
Absolutely. Listen, I have found out, it's been my experience that people vote with their pocketbooks first. If they can pay the rent, put food on the table, and enjoy their car, go on vacation a little bit, everybody's happy. When you start to interfere in that, that's when that's the main thing people vote about. There's no question about it. And, when I describe in the book how these politicians come into office, blue collar people, and they go out multimillionaires on $175,000 salary. How do you explain that? And it happens so often, because they bend the rules, and it's all to the detriment of the people that they were elected to serve. All of it. None of that satisfies the people.
Imagine if they could only get elected on the median income of their constituency.
Exactly. And you know what, Mike? They all talk about all these wealthy people and how they don't pay their fair share. Well, they're the ones they're making the deals with. The lobbyists are representing those very wealthy people that all these politicians are earning off and making the deal with. I think they must tell them in the back room, listen, we got to dog you a little bit, but don't worry, nothing's going to really happen about it. I mean, it's insane. It makes no sense. The very people they're earning with.
With you being in California on that note, because you're in California, correct?
Yes.
And you hang around some pretty high profile folks.
Yeah.
Obviously. How or do you not get sucked into playing politics? I mean, you obviously have to rub shoulders, right? You have to bump knuckles to get books out and things like that. Do you take a hard stance where you're like, hey, look, you wouldn't come to me to write a book because I don't give a fuck about money? Or do you still play a little bit of politics here and there to kind of get your message across? How do you do it?
No, I don't play politics with them. Number one, I'm a Christian, and I'm pretty firm in my faith. Not perfect, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But when it comes to certain things, there's principle that you just can't violate. And listen, I'll tell you about California. We got best weather in the world in Southern California. We got beautiful landscaping, but we got the worst economics and the worst politicians. Aside from New York, it's like the bookends. New York and California,
Right.
The two worst. The two places I've lived most of my life. I used to live in Florida too, which was great. But no, I don't cow down to that. I mean, there was some people that, look, if I ever met this governor, he wouldn't want to meet me. I mean, I would be politely critical of him. Anyway, because look, it doesn't pay to be a jerk. You got to approach things the right way. But I would let him know, exactly how I feel.
I own a rum distillery in a small town just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. And so I just recently, because we got the little elections going on, and I do believe this guy was a Republican, I think. But I got a really nice message that said, hey, look, we're not saying that you are voting for me or anything like that, but I would love to host an event at your distillery. I will bring in all the food. I will also purchase X amount of rum, which was a lot more rum for the event. So it's basically like I'm paying you, but I'm not paying you type deal. If all we need to do is just have a space to host my event. And I just wrote back, I said, hey man, we're a hardworking, blue collar, honest distillery. I'm not sure any politician would fit in. And he wrote back, well played.
I like that.
You mentioned you said you're a Christian, but I'm curious, and I know that you're under a little bit of a time crunch, but at what point in your life was faith a part of it? Were you always, as an Italian family, were you sort of like nominally socially Catholic, culturally Catholic, and then eventually came to a different perspective? Or what was this journey of faith? Because now, obviously, we mentioned earlier, you speak to churches or prison ministry groups or whatever, and your faith is sort of like front and center, I know, on your YouTube channel where I was looking. So talk to me about that.
Well, I grew up as a Catholic. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten right through high school. It was more that my parents thought that's just a better education you get. It wasn't so much the religious part of it that they wanted. It was just better than the public school system. I was an altar boy the whole bit, but I wasn't a strict Catholic. Catholicism to me was almost like a subject in school, so, and you can't practice Catholic faith and be in the mob. The contradictions, So we said, okay, I'm a Catholic, but I'm first a mobster. And that's what I do. I'm a made guy first. And, basically what happened, my wife now, who I've been married to for 37 years, she's a strong Christian. When I met her, she was a strong Christian. My mother-in-law was the strongest woman of God I ever met. And when I went back into prison, I had done 5 years. I got out on parole for 13 months, violated my parole like a fool, went back in. And it was during that time, they put me in lockdown. I was in solitary for 29 months and 7 days. And during that time is when I really got into my faith. It was through my reading of scripture and several books that my wife sent me in on other faiths, because I was really searching for the truth at that time. And when I got out, it just became stronger over the past 25 years. And I've come to really know and believe that God had a different plan and purpose for my life. And the reason I tell you that, the night I got straightened out, that's the term they use when you get made. There was 6 of us that night. I'm the only one alive today. The other 5 guys were all murdered. We had a war in our family in the early 90s. These guys were all killed in different circumstances. And, Fortune magazine wrote an article in 1986, 50 biggest and most powerful mob bosses in the country. It was half the magazine. It was a huge article. They featured 6 of us. I was one of the 6. And they had a chart with the 50 of us on there according to rank and wealth and power. I was number 18 on the list. I was the youngest guy on the list, 5 behind John Gotti. John hadn't been made boss yet. And it was a silly list. Don't get me wrong. They didn't ask for our tax returns. I don't know how they but it sold a lot of magazines. But here's what's not silly about that list. Out of the list of 50, 48 of them are dead.
Wow.
Number 49 is still in prison, and I'm the only guy that's free, number 50. So I never went into the program. I never hid from anybody. I was smart. I didn't throw myself in front of the crowd, because, look, when I walked away, there was a contract on me. My father was very upset. I had a lot of trouble over it, but I didn't put anybody in prison. I wasn't into that. I didn't want to cooperate with the feds to that point. I just tried to solve everything. And, hey, guys, I'm really out of the life. Leave me alone. You want to hear about what I did? You want me to tell you how we trapped athletes in these gambling schemes? I'll do all of that, but I don't want to put people in prison. I'm not going that distance. And they were upset with me. I mean, they wanted me. This is all the feds, by the way. It's nobody else. They wanted me to cooperate. They threatened me. They kept me in lockdown. They put me on diesel therapy, trying to do all that stuff. But
What's diesel therapy?
Diesel therapy is the worst part of doing federal time, because what happens is they put you on some plane that the marshals confiscated from some drug dealers. They pick you up in the middle of the night. They send you someplace in the system. They keep you there for a week in lockdown, pick you up again, drive you to another place, and it's just a daisy chain. They keep driving you around. You can't get comfortable. You're always in lockdown. You can't get a visit, and it's the most wearing thing that you can imagine. So they did that to me. They put me on diesel therapy. They had me in lockdown, but we got through it all, and here I am, all these years later, alive and free, and professing my faith. And I'll tell you this, guys, and this is no joke. If you're a made man in that life and you die of old age and you die free, you've really accomplished something. It's a tough life to navigate. Trust me on that. And I've been able to do both. And I think it was because there's a different plan for my life. It's become very obvious to me. And so that's my faith. And again, for people listening, I'm not perfect at all. I still make mistakes. I think I'm a lot better than I was way back when. But I also have the right people now holding me accountable. Like my wife, like the people that I trust, my children, people that want to see me do well. Because listen, I still have my old instincts. You spend 25 years on the street, they don't just go away. You still have old instincts, that I want to deal with things a certain way, but I won't, because I don't want to get in trouble again. I don't want to hurt my family. So it's all about who you're accountable to in life. If you're accountable to the right people and really accountable, that keeps you on the right path. And that's the story. That's the
Do you
bottom
think
line.
do you think there's guys that are made right now that watch your YouTubes or that follow you? Do you feel like when you're talking sometimes, are you trying to, not secretly, but like almost like subliminally trying to talk to some of these guys that might be made, that might be watching your YouTube channel?
You know, Eric, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I mean that. And you nailed it. Yeah, because I know they're watching. I hear things coming back to me. I know they're watching, and I hope that, you know, it has an influence on them positively. And they realize, you know, that the reason I walked away, because look, that's a bad life. It's an evil life. The mob, the gangs. And why do I say that? I'm not calling the guys evil. I was one of them. I just happened to be fortunate and blessed. And maybe they didn't have the opportunities that I had to get out of that life. I don't know. But the lifestyle is evil because I don't know any family of any member of that life that hasn't been devastated, including my own. Now, not my wife and kids, because I left, but my mother, 33 years without a husband. At the end of her life, her relationship with my dad was ugly. It was just ugly because she blamed him for everything that went wrong. What went wrong? My sister dies of an overdose of drugs at the age of 27. My brother, a drug addict for 25 years, eventually went into the witness protection program, cooperated with the government, and testified against my dad, his own father, put my dad back in prison twice, on a parole violation once and then on another case. Devastating. My younger sister was not, you know, emotionally stable. She dies young at the age of 42. And this is, every family has these kind of issues with guys that are made guys. So any lifestyle that does that to a family is a bad life. And that's what I tell these young kids. I said, you stay in this life, you're going to destroy your family. You're doing it already. And you're going to end up either dead or in prison. You're not going to be a success. You're never going to hold down a job. You're not going to have a lot of money because whatever money you make on the street, you're going to blow it. And you're not going to have anything steady in your life. So get out of it while you can. And that's my experience. I'm not just blowing smoke. I know it. I see it. I lived with it. And I try to discourage people from the street. And, you know, they tell, law enforcement. I said, look, I have 5 daughters and a wife. When they walk down the street, I want the police to protect them. And if they get in trouble, I want them to call the police. You people thinking of this is insanity. Who's going to keep law and order? You're going to do it? Politicians are going to do it. They don't come to your neighborhood, and they don't let you in their neighborhood. So what are they going to do for you? Nothing. It's the police that are going to help you and save you. Don't do the wrong thing. You don't have to worry about them. Bottom line, you don't like them, stay out of their way. And
Michael,
that's
before you go, what would you say? I don't know if it's the top 2, 3, whatever, however many you can kind of like pop to mind. The common myths about mob fiction versus mob reality. What people think mob life is like or about versus what it really is.
Well, again, and you know, even more so now because of a lot of the YouTubers from guys that were associates of that life. I think people think that every day, you know, we had somebody that we had to go out and baseball bat or murder or extort. That's not what it was all about. You know, it was more guys. There were guys like that doing that. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, the Frank Costellos of the world, the Joe Colombos of the world, the Sonny Franzese even for a time, you know, that carried themselves differently. It wasn't all about, it was an organization. Yes, if we had to handle things differently than a legal person would, we would. But it was a last resort among the right guys in that life. But the way things are portrayed, even in the movies, you know, that this was nothing but violence every day of the week. And that guys were just thugs. It's not true. You know, Frank Costello was a guy that carried himself well. He had a lot of political connections. He was diplomatic in that way. A lot of politicians worked with him because of his style and his character. Joe Colombo and a lot was the same way. And a lot of the guys that I knew carried themselves a little bit differently than is portrayed a lot lately. So, you know, I mean, I think that's the way. There's so many things that people come out with that I say, I don't know where they got this from, but, you know, it is what it is.
Where's Jimmy Hoffa?
You know, listen, I will tell you this, and then you can take it for whatever it's worth. One of the guys that was allegedly a shooter, and now I know the order to kill Hoffa came out of New York, 100%. That's for a fact. One of the shooters was a New York guy. And about 5 years ago, a guy comes home from prison that I knew from a long time ago. He was a Colombo associate. He wasn't a made guy. And he says to me, Michael, so-and-so is in prison, and he wants to tell you this story, and he asked me to relay it to you. And I said, well, why does he want to relay it to me? And I knew the guy. He was a guy I knew. And he said, well, if there ever comes a time when you can make a movie or do something out of this, please take care of his family, because he's doing life in prison. He's going to die there. And he tells me the story of Hoffa and how it went down. So at the end of the day, I said to him, well, where's the body? And I can only tell you this. This is my belief. Now, this is what I was told from somebody I believe would be a very reliable source. He said, Mike, they're never going to find this body, and the body is wet. He says, that's what I'm going to let you know. And he gave me the general area that the body is in. And I said to the guy, I want to put this all on tape. Make a tape of everything. And he did. And I have the tapes. I said, but unless we find the body, it's just another guy with another story. So what's the sense of telling anybody or bringing it forward? Now, I do have the tapes. And I had a production company that came to me and said, Michael, we'll spend $1 million looking for the body in that general area. And I said, but what if you don't find it? They said, well, so what? We made a good show out of it. I said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm not here just
It's like
to make another show.
Geraldo. What was the old Geraldo thing where he tried to
With
go and
the
find something?
The empty Capone safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Made him
yeah,
a star.
Yeah.
It made him a star, but it was empty. So the bottom line is, I can't tell you, 100% that's what it is, but I believe the source is reliable. So now they said they're going to dig Hoffa up in some junkyard in New Jersey or something. So who knows? We'll see if that happens. I don't believe so, but we'll see.
It's got to be here in Detroit where I'm at. I'm always holding out hope that
exactly.
we'll find it here.
Well, that's the vicinity that it's in.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Dude, Mike, get your shovel.
No,
some water, dude.
I gotta
Let's
get
get
a
to
boat,
work.
and I gotta get a dive. You know who we need?
We need divers. Yes.
It's James Cameron. He did Titanic, right? He had the little bubble boats that went down.
Yeah.
We need those, and I'm gonna hit the Detroit River, and I'll see you in a few years.
Well, you see that. Maybe you'll get lucky, and for all of these climate change people, Lake Mead in Vegas is receding, and piles of bodies are coming up. I don't know if you heard that story.
Yeah.
So maybe it'll happen in the Detroit River, and they'll just pop out.
I think some mob people in Vegas have some answering to do about, what's being found in Lake Mead now. I don't know.
Well, they're probably all gone. The guys that were responsible for those hits at the time, I doubt they're around anymore.
Well, hey, man, we really appreciate you coming on, and wish you the best of luck, too. I love your YouTube channel, man. I watch it all the time.
Thank you.
Really cool shit. And if you ever need anything from us, you know where to find us.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And the same thing here. And listen, what I said about the police, I really mean it. And if there's ever a cause or anything that I can contribute to in any way or help you guys in any way, I feel an obligation to do that. So you let me know.
Appreciate that. I look forward to being able to maybe cross paths again and work on something in the future. And in the meantime, guys, go grab Mafia Democracy, How Our Republic Became a Mob Racket. And like I said, I'm enjoying it because what happened for me, I thought, I don't know, am I really going to like this? Because you talk about what we all know is true, that politicians are trash, right? Everyone knows, like, this game is dirty, but you actually give the specifics comparing your experience. Like, I'll tell you it's like you're like, I'll tell you exactly what's going on, and you literally lay it out, and it's like, oh yeah, all right, cool, there it is. And it's actually not that complex. It's just corrupt politicians running a play from Machiavelli.
Exactly. We weren't very complicated on the street. We were pretty simple in what we did, and the government is doing it the same way. So,
perfect.
Guys, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on, and we appreciate it. And hopefully, we'll talk to you soon, man.
Yes, anytime. I'm here. All right, guys. Take care.
All right, see ya.